Who better to break down all the recent developments in the Epstein pedophile cover-up than a former FBI agent and national security expert and Legal AF contributor, Asha Rangappa, co-host of It's Complicated. She joined fellow podcaster and friend Michael Cohen for a scintillating breakdown on Michael's Mea Culpa podcast. And I wanted you to see it here, one-stop shopping on Legal AF. Here's Asha and Michael Cohen.
So Todd Blanche, Trump's former lawyer and now turned deputy attorney general, sat down with Ghislaine Maxwell for hours and hours of questioning. Now, of course, she got a proffer immunity. I want you to explain to my listeners, because I think there's some real misinformation that's going on out there. What's the legal rationale that would justify granting immunity to a convicted sex trafficker already serving a sentence?
I have been going over that, in different forums. I mean, Michael, come on. You and I know, unless, are we really to believe that there is something that Ghislaine Maxwell can offer now after decades of being investigated? Okay, let's remember her involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, even though she wasn't the direct target of that investigation, the one in the Southern District of Florida that spanned from 1999 to 2005, she would have been, a part of that. The charges that led to his being indicted in 2019, she would have come up in that. She herself was charged in 2020. In all this time, she's never come forward. But now suddenly she's got new and credible information to give after she's been convicted of, sex trafficking and has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. I cannot think of a single reason, that she would have any kind of new or credible information that would be of use to the Justice Department. That would not have come to light by now if it actually existed. And I also can talk about, even if she did have this information, the fact that he went to this interview by himself, not with the prosecutor who did the case, not with any other FBI agents, right, not with anybody who actually knows the facts of the case inside and out. How is he going to know if it's new or if it's credible?
So interestingly enough, when I was in Otisville, the Manhattan District Attorney came to Otisville and sat down with me on 3 separate occasions. I don't know if you know that story. They showed up. Yeah. They went through Lanny Davis. They contacted him. He reached out to me. We had an attorney-client privilege phone call and asked me if I would be willing to sit down with them. Now, of course, they granted me a proffer immunity for the sit down. There was no way in the world I was going to sit down with these animals, right? Especially while I'm wearing green and they're wearing suits without a proffer immunity, meaning whatever we discuss, if they happen to disagree or it happens to be wrong, I certainly didn't need new charges coming against me. Here's the thing. One, what Todd Blanche, while completely unusual, it's not illegal. But here's the thing that kind of weirded me out, because I agree with you. Why would she not have made a deal to provide any information on somebody bigger than her to the FBI, to law enforcement, to the prosecutors, who are always looking to step it up in order to get a reduced sentence? 20 years is a long freaking time. Let me be clear. All right. It's a really long time. But now she says that they discussed 100 different people. Here's the thing, though. One of the crazy things is when I was meeting again with these prosecutors from the Manhattan DA's office, every single thing that I told them where to find corroborating documentary evidence or corroborating testimony. I know the case in and out. So I was able to guide them into what they needed to do, where they needed to look in terms of the file. Well, they did that, which is what was the reason they came back a second and a third time. When I was ultimately released, why they called me again and asked me if I would come down and meet. You think that any of the 100 names that she allegedly spoke to Todd Blanche about, that there is some form of evidence, documentary evidence inside this file that, of course, nobody has had a chance to see yet?
I mean, are you asking whether there's corroboration for what she's saying? Is that what you're saying? I mean, I don't even think they care about that, Michael. I mean, one thing that we have to remember with Trump, think back to the perfect phone call with Zelensky, right? And remember, he wanted Zelensky to get on CNN and announce an investigation into the Bidens. He actually didn't care if there was an actual investigation. What he wanted was someone else to point the finger at Biden and say Biden did something illegal and he's being investigated. And that was going to be they were just going to run with that, right? Whatever happened after that, whether Ukraine investigated him or not. And I think that's really what's at stake here. This is not about actually building a case. We have had, 3 different sets of prosecutors in 2 different jurisdictions between the Southern District of Florida and the Southern District of New York. Look at all of this evidence and what they have said. And even Trump's own Justice Department very recently said, there's no one else we can charge on this, which isn't to say that there's nobody else in the files who's done anything bad, right? But the Justice Department manual requires that if you bring charges, they have to be charges that you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt and secure a conviction. And that's really hard to do, in these kinds of cases. They're not going to build a case on whoever she points the finger at. Was she going to be the star witness, the person who was charged with 2 counts of perjury?
Sure. I hear that all the time, that there's no way that she could be, a credible witness. And I say bullshit to that. I had same things being said about me day in and day. Oh, he lied to Congress, regardless what I lied about, right? The number of times that I claimed to have spoken to Trump about the failed Trump Tower Moscow project, I said 3. The real answer was 10. Everybody kept running with it. All these assholes these pundits on TV. Oh, Michael Cohen's not a credible witness because he got charged with 1,001 violation.
But Ghislaine Maxwell lied about, literally lied about her own involvement in these. She lied about what she was eventually convicted for.
Mm-hmm.
I think in magnitude and the nature of it, I would say it would be really hard for her to be a star witness
unless of course that everything that she says is corroborated by either documentary evidence or some corroborating statement by a third party. I mean, I think that you can build the case. Just because she lied then doesn't mean that she's lying now. Not everything that comes out of her mouth is a lie. But I'm with you. She's a difficult witness. But I hate when they say that it can never be. Don't forget, off of my testimony at not only a civil trial, but also a criminal trial, both ended up in convictions.
Yeah, listen, prosecutors do use people later. But I mean, Michael, and I mean this, it's definitely a compliment. You are not in the same universe as.
No, I appreciate it.
I mean, just on a number of fronts, right? I mean, you cooperated with other investigations. You did testify, in front of. I mean,
7 times.
Right. So Ghislaine Maxwell, I would just say, is, in terms of the depravity of her actions, what she's lied about, her own participation and culpability in the victimization of these women, in my opinion, would not be the person that I, as a prosecutor, would be like, here's who we want to hang our hat on. And there may be corroboration, but I guess my question to you, Michael, is why isn't Todd Blanche talking to the victims?
So I'm so glad you asked me. So smart, Asha. That's why I asked you to come on, right? Because you're right. Todd Blanche is not some junior prosecutor, right? I mean, we're talking about right now the guy who is the second highest law enforcement officer in the country, sitting there in the room with Ghislaine. I want to ask you, first and foremost, how unusual is it for a deputy attorney general to actually personally conduct an in-prison profession like this?
I mean, have you ever heard of it before?
I have not.
I mean, did Rod Rosenstein come and talk to you when you were in prison?
No.
No,
I would have asked him to buy. I would have asked him to buy me a, what do you call it, an ice cream and a soda.
The deputy attorney general is a number two, right? Like they are there to oversee all of the U.S. attorney's offices. Yes, the Epstein case is huge, but it's not something that the deputy attorney general would be in the weeds on, right? Like they're dealing with policy stuff. They're dealing with strategic priorities. They're dealing with, managing the different offices across the country. So, it's unusual because why would he suddenly be the one on this case? The person that would be appropriate to conduct this interview, if one was necessary at all, is a prosecutor who prosecuted the case, who is Maureen Comey. And guess what happened to Maureen Comey? She got fired. Yeah. So why would you get rid of the person who's going to be who would know the most about this case? I mean, that. So
I can actually give you the answer to that one.
Okay.
All right? Again, being somebody that was in that world, that would have, if I was in Trump's inner circle, I would have been the one going down there to meet with Ghislaine. And let me explain. Todd Blanche is not there to do anything other than a fact-finding mission on behalf of Trump. And by the way, since it's not illegal, I think it's actually a pretty ingenious move for whoever made the decision to send Todd Blanche. Why? Because he is a true loyalist. And at the end of the day, here's what they need to find out. Only one of two options. One, hypothetically, there is no information that Ghislaine to provide. Now they could rest much easier, knowing that there's nothing there. She'll do her time in exchange for maybe a couple of, good quips about Bill Clinton or, a bunch of Democrats that may have been to Epstein's Island. She could turn around and say some things like Trump was never on Epstein Island, which he made the claim today on. On top of that, they can go after some of the Democrats. They'll declare this a giant win. Or the second option, that there actually is something there. Now they know how and what they need to do to control the flow of that information. So that's really what this was. And Todd Blanche was, as far as I'm concerned, as a loyalist of Trump, the right guy to send there. Sending somebody like a Maureen Comey, you're basically looking at, another whistleblower scenario where she comes back with a report that is not favorable to Trump or maybe some of his allies.
Absolutely, because her client would have been the people of the United States.
Right. I mean, I did this whole great Substack on it where I broke it down. But let me ask you this, because Blanche actually wasn't over one day. This was a 2-day meeting, right? I mean, it's a lot on the government's clock. You think this is about getting facts from Maxwell, or, as I said, controlling the Epstein narrative before, I don't know, maybe this spirals out of control?
Oh, I think it's definitely about controlling the narrative, because I don't know. I mean, I guess to kind of your earlier point about, either she knows something or she does it. I wouldn't trust her farther than I could kick her. If she's like, oh yeah, I don't know anything. Like, I'd be like, girl, I don't trust you. I mean, so it's very clear that like she wants something, right?
You think?
She's got, and I think the fact that he went means that she does know something and that she has power, which is why they have to go and offer something. And the question is, what are they going to be willing to hand her to not say what she knows? I don't think this is a question that she doesn't know something, or are they going to be able to strike some deal? They offer something and then she points the fingers at everybody other than Trump, kind of. But there was no fact-finding mission. This was a deal-making mission. And I'm just curious how far Trump is going to make. But my other question, Michael, I've just been turning this around in my head. What could possibly be so damaging to Trump at this point? This man could do anything.
This one. Yeah, I'm not.
This is what
you know what?
I just he could be like, yeah, I'm in the files, of course. Like I was, this man was my friend until I kicked him to the curb. So I'm in the files.
By the way, we know.
Yeah. We know this. So why is he acting so weird? What is he afraid of?
So we know for a fact that he's in the file.
Right.
And it could be and I believe it to be this, as innocuous as Trump's name appearing in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. And we've all seen the Black Book already. It's not like you can go online, you could download, I have it, the copy of Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. Somehow it surfaced many years ago, and Donald's name is in it. So are many, many people, many celebrities, many high-powered people. Okay, let me turn around and say, it doesn't mean anything. I found it interesting that Trump declared that he was actually never on Epstein's island. What I also was a little bit turned off by is the language that he used. I was never honored to be on Epstein, or privileged to be on Epstein's island. I'm not really sure I would call that a privilege, but he certainly made the right move by not being there. And I think that's interesting. But I like your point about there has to be something. What is it? He could actually shoot somebody and get less pushback than this. This is something that has enraged everybody. Because whether you're MAGA or whether you are far left, you have the two polar opposites. You're talking about pedophilia here. And most of these people either have children, have nieces, nephews, or whatever. This is just something that, for whatever the reason, maybe this is a story that will not go away. By the way, I want to ask you this too, because in my Substack, I come up with this sort of theory. If there is actually something there and Trump issues a pardon, there will be conditions to that pardon. First and foremost, she has to leave the country. All right. And they'll probably send her to a place that has no extradition, but wouldn't matter because she got a pardon anyway. But they'll put her up in an area. There's plenty of money in this group to shut her up. They will give her a pardon. She has to leave the country and sign some sort of a Frankenstein NDA that she cannot write a book. She can't work with documentaries. She can't even talk about this. Otherwise, the pardon disappears. Right? There'll be conditions on it. I'm telling you, you will never see that. You will never see that.
Thing. I don't know. I don't think a pardon can be conditional.
It is conditional because Trump says it's conditional. And you know what? I'm pretty sure that she's willing to at least, during the next 10 years, keep her mouth shut, right? Until, maybe his demise. And then she'll be permitted. But during the course of his lifetime, not a chance. Not a chance. What do you think? You think that's a possibility there?
I don't think that's a possibility because I don't think that even if Trump were to say it's conditional, I think if he gives the pardon, she'll always have that as the backstop if they ever tried to go after her. In other words, it's no guarantee. They would need to, as you said, probably throw a lot of money at her, get her to shut, the NDA is an interesting thing. They could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Do the pardon and then the NDA on the side.
Yeah. Like I said, some Frankenstein NDA.
So you think the pardon would fly with his base?
They are probably right now trying to figure out what's a good angle, a good spin tactic on this. Because I know I've been in not nowhere near this sort of perversion and so on, but I remember we would have sit-down sessions where we would actually discuss the way that we were going to spin something, including the grab her by the pussy comment. I mean, this was not something that just popped right up. There were many, many concepts and ideas floated around the table, right? It was actually Melania who came up with the one, it's just locker room talk, right? And he was like, That's all that it was, hun. It was just locker room talk. We were just two guys bullshitting, being stupid.
So you're saying that they are right now actively operating as the deep state that they always criticize?
You think?
On how to keep information from coming out.
You think?
Yeah, after they've been feeding all this information. I mean, they could also try to get her sentence reduced. I mean, she could do some kabuki dance where she gives information that they reveal or they don't reveal or not, but they don't reveal it and they say, now we're investigating it. And then they go in.
Oh, no. Let me stop you right there, my love. All right. No chance. Ash, let me be very clear. If they do this and they make this move, and I'm talking about either a commutation or a pardon,
there has to be
rest assured there will be something. I don't care if it's one person look, Maxwell's attorney came outside and said that she answered roughly 100 questions, honestly, truthfully, to the best of her knowledge and so on, 100 without invoking a single privilege. If one of those questions,
100 names, and it's like, what can you tell me about this person? What can you tell me about this person?
And if that person is a Democrat, and then all of a sudden they're going to be able to do it, rest assured, Trump will use that one issue. So instead of the denominator being 100, the denominator will be just one, and the numerator is the individual that makes up the denominator. Therefore, I was 100% correct. That's the angle that they're floating here. And it's a strategy. Watch. I've made many predictions. I am 100% certain. All right. If there's any action for a commutation or a pardon, rest assured somebody is getting called out.
I agree with you. If they're going to give her anything, they're going to have to throw some red meat out there. I think the pardon would be very risky for him. I'm still wanting to know what he's so worried about.
By the way, there's only one way to find that out, right, Ash? The only way is to release the entire file unredacted, except for the names of the victims. Now, by the way, the crazy thing is they keep saying, we need to protect the victims. We need to protect the victims. There's like 100 victims out there. I think it could be even more in terms of
almost 1,000. Yeah.
Okay, let's say it's 1,000. I don't know what the exact number is, but let's just use yours. Hypothetically, It's 1,000 young women. Children at the time, now they're all in their mid to late 40s or maybe a little older than that, right? Because they were like 16 and this happened in 1990, give or take. So you're talking about somewhere in their mid to late 40s and early 50s. The point is, many of those names have already been released. Many of those victims have come forward. And many of them, at this point in time, have already had to deal with the consequences of what transpired. I mean, I've seen several on television already. Mm-hmm. These folks don't care if their name is redacted or not.
Well, their names could be in context or, situations that they may not want. In other words, they lose control over
the narrative,
over the stories that they, have chosen to share. But I think to your point, there is a methodical way of going through and making sure that, victims' names are redacted, even, and I think, there is some complicated things because like what Epstein was doing, he was running sort of like a sex trafficking Ponzi scheme, right? Where these girls would get recruited and then they would be told to go and get more. And so like, you would need to, there's still victims in that context, right? Like if they're being coerced and whatever, like groomed to do this, they're still victims, even if they're, bringing in other people. So like, I think it's a sprawling and complicated case, but there is a way, if they were doing this methodically, to shield them, and frankly, to turn these files over to Congress, because Congress is really the body that is designed to create transparency and make public, to give the public awareness over something that is of public interest. It's really not the job of the Justice Department. The Justice Department's job is to bring charges, and if they're not going to bring charges, to keep their mouth shut. And so you see, for example, Congress did this with U.S. gymnastics. If you'll remember, they had a hearing. Sure. They bring and they allow the victims that want to testify the chance to testify. They called people on the carpet, like the U.S. Gymnastics Committee, to explain their actions. They excoriated the FBI agents. That is something that absolutely Congress can and should do. And so that's another tell. We're focusing on Todd Blanche, but we're also keep in mind, they're not turning the files over not only to the public, but not even to Congress, which has, requested this information.
Yeah. But, the wildness, the craziness, the insanity that's coming out of D.C. every single day, whether it's Trump or worse, his enablers, they are now claiming, this is Trump and his enablers. Sometimes I almost think it's like, there's like a spin board, like one of those things that, you spin that goes a wheel that goes around and around and around. And it's like, okay, this one is, let's bring a claim for this. And then you flip names and you pull them out of a hat because none of this makes sense. So Trump, his enablers, they're now claiming that Beyonce, Oprah, my buddy Reverend Al, all took money to endorse Kamala Harris. It's so crazy. Now, legally speaking,
and what's the common denominator, Michael, of all the people that you just listed?
I think it has to do with their skin color. Now, legally speaking, is there any actual basis for these claims, or is this all just political fiction?
So to my knowledge, there's no base to these claims. But the reason that I asked you the question on what's the common denominator is that this is sort of one of Trump's go-tos, right? Like last week, we had Tulsi Gabbard come out with Barack Hussein Obama and Russiagate, going back to 2016 and bringing out the greatest hits. And this is a treasonous conspiracy or whatever. Never mind that, by the way, he now has absolute immunity thanks to the Supreme Court. So why are you even bringing up Obama? It doesn't matter. I guess that didn't stick because now we're here and look at all the Black people who are making a lot of, who are very rich. And, I guess this is supposed to make his base really mad and they're in cahoots with Democrats. That's the story I hear.
Well, can we add to that story? Because, they made claims, Trump made claims that Beyonce got paid $11 million
which is not
endorsing.
True,
Right, because the public filings, they show that her company actually received $165,000, which was allocated to production of the campaign event, microphones, speakers, lighting, et cetera, et cetera. Where is it's a pretty big difference, 165 grand versus 11 million. Where do you think and who do you think got that info wrong? Because we see this again and again and again. His enablers are giving him wrong information, and they're actually doing more harm to him than he's even doing to himself.
Well, I think we've reached the stage of, kind of the autocratic transformation where you have the would-be autocrat surrounded by only yes people, right? Like only loyalists who are going to tell him only what he wants to hear. So just to give a example, this is what happened to Putin before he invaded Ukraine. He had a bunch of people around him who were like, yeah, you're going to take Ukraine in 3 hours. And he was like, yeah, and then here we are 3 years later. So I think that's where Trump is like, he's in the Kim Jong-un stage where only people can only tell him, and it is going to start backfiring. Let me suggest another theory, because I just did some Substack office hours and somebody suggested this. Somebody said, are these calls coming from inside the house? Meaning Are there people around him that want to sabotage him, knowing that this is a politically vulnerable issue that he's not going to be able to escape, because there is some faction that would love to see a president advance?
Or somebody else, because I actually did a Substack on that too, my Asha. All right,
Okay.
all right.
I
Hold
like
on.
that we think.
I
we're
have.
thinking
We do. We think exactly. We think very much the same here. What I turned around and said, something which is what I believe is when you have people like Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, and all attacking Trump on the Epstein matter, not allowing it to die down, not giving it, just feeding it more oxygen so that it keeps burning. You got to ask yourself why. And what I believe
Murdoch.
What I believe is that what they're really looking for, they're looking for control over MAGA. They realize that they have built, because Steve Bannon believes he is the architect of MAGA. And Steve Bannon, he believes that he's more qualified to be president. He said so himself many times, that he's more qualified to be president than Trump. And so if you can take over the base, that is a major power, because Trump technically won, right, the nomination based upon that. They don't want Trump to be the individual, the power broker for whoever might be the next president nominee. They don't want Donald Trump to have that power. If they can take it and become the power themselves, and I believe that Charlie Kirk wants it, I believe Steve Bannon wants it, I believe Tucker Carlson wants it, and that this is all internal by them within which to create this sort of chaos that beats Trump down once and for all.
I like this theory, but you're not suggesting that Bannon wants to be president. He's a slob.
Oh, I most certainly am. That he wants to either.
Slob. No, he'd have to wear a suit and shave and shower.
Yeah, well, those are three requirements. I do believe that he sees himself, and I write about it, that he's already redecorating the curtains in the Oval Office in his imagination. I believe Tucker Carlson sees himself, and if he's not going to be the president,
J.D. Vance wants to be president more than anything in the world.
Except he is wildly unpopular, even with his own base. Believe it or not.
How would he not be? Like if they were to Brutus Trump by impeaching him, 25th Amendment, something like that. JD, he steps in. That's it.
Okay, but you know that there's no impeachment that's going to happen. It's like it's just a false narrative. First and foremost, even if you ended up getting articles of impeachment, again, the Senate is never going to, by the 2/3 majority, they will never ever do it.
Whatever is so embarrassing, if they have a reason that they can be like, we cannot support him anymore.
Yeah.
And get control of the base to say, yeah, you're right. Yeah. We can't. No matter. This is one step too far.
Right, and I'm the Easter Bunny. Not a chance. Look, but I want to ask you this because, right? I mean, these names, whether it's Beyonce, Oprah, my buddy Rev Al, these are really major cultural figures, and he's attacking them with zero evidence of it. And in fact, whatever evidence that his enablers have provided him are just wrong. Can Beyonce, Oprah, Reverend Al, can they actually sue Trump for defamation, or, as public figures? Are they just stuck to tolerating this kind of smear?
I think they could sue for defamation. So do you know that President Macron and his wife have sued Candace Owens for defamation? Now, she was allegedly engaged in this ongoing effort spreading lies. So it wasn't just a one-time thing. I don't know how often Trump has tweeted untruths or whatever you call it on his social media platform. But the bar is high for public figures. They have to show that not only that the statement is false, but that the person making the statement did it with actual malice. frankly, I don't think the actual malice piece is that hard to prove with Trump. I mean, right? Like, especially we're not talking about a discrepancy of like $1,000. Like, I mean, this is like an entire fact made up out of whole cloth, right?
I mean,
like it's not like, oh, I just got the numbers wrong or something. He's alleging criminal wrongdoing, right? Which is a reputational harm. And he's in a position of all people being the president of the United States and the head of law enforcement for the entire country to actually have the information at his disposal to be able to know whether what he's saying is true or not. So I think they could. The question is, their calculation is probably, and I think this is what everybody's like deciding when they come into President Trump's crosshairs, which is, do we just let this, do we hope this passes, that the eye of Sauron will then come to rest on somebody else and he'll move on when this doesn't stick? Or am I going to fight this? And so the question is, legally, can they? Yes. Would they have a case? I think so. Are they going to do it? I mean, that it just kind of keeps, it makes them like an ongoing target. And I think we've seen so many other people and entities capitulate because they just don't want to be an ongoing target in this administration.
It's too bad because America has very, very difficult defamation laws within which to deal with versus, say, for example, the UK. Now, of course, the distinction, if you bring an action and you lose in the UK, you're not just paying your legal fees, you're also paying the other party's legal fees. You may recall, and again, there should be some form of accountability for these defamatory statements. You might remember there was allegations that Poroshenko, who at the time was the president of Ukraine, had paid me over $400,000 within which to set up a meeting between him and Trump, that they were supposed to have like a 3-minute meeting. It became an hour-long meeting, and allegedly that they had paid me like this $400,000 or $500,000. It was a lie. Well, they called up Poroshenko's office, the Ukrainian, the Ukrainian capital, and the statement out of Ukraine was that this is a complete and total lie. We've never met Michael Cohen. We've never spoken to him. We certainly have never paid him, but they published it anyway. Well, they were willing to do a retraction, but not before Poroshenko brought in action in the UK. And he was successful. And he won several £100,000 as against them. Now, how much money did they make off of the story? Unquantifiable, but it's really, and somebody that's lived through lies, whether it's the Steele dossier all the way to, God, that I own a dacha next to Vladimir Putin in Sochi, to that I received money from Poroshenko in Ukraine for an improper meeting, to I don't even know how many more. I think there's like 60 some odd lies that were told about me. I understand what Beyonce, what Oprah, what Rev Al are going through. It is really terrible because once that lie is out there is a segment of stupid people in this country that no matter how you try to give them the facts, God himself could come down from the heaven and turn around and say, it's not true. Beyonce didn't get $11 million. She got 165. Oprah got paid for production as well. Al Sharpton did it for outreach. He received X amount of dollars. They still won't believe it. Even if the Lord comes down from the heavens above, they are so into this culture of just conspiracy theory on top of conspiracy theory, they'll never let it go. And that's where I think the defamation is actually has its best basis.
Well, it's interesting to kind of tie this back to the Epstein thing. If she does point fingers at people and it can't be, I think it'll be an interesting tell. Like if there are people that if she were to implicate people and they turn around and they sue her for defamation. So that's, I haven't heard that mentioned, but that could, because what does that do? That requires her to cough up the goods. Or if Trump decides to, point the finger claiming that she's the one who implicated them, because then you have discovery.
Hence why I said that she's going to have to leave the country.
Yeah, and if if they even claim, oh yeah, there's corroboration in these files, well, you better be ready for some discovery then if people are going to challenge you for defamation, because then those files are definitely coming out. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought about the defamation angle, that if, that's a potential, backfire that could happen.
Asha, I think you and I are going to have to do like a 30-minute Substack on that one.
Totally.
There's no doubt in my mind. Hey, let me ask you this, because, one of the biggest problems, and again, I felt this personally, given the size of Trump's audience, as well as his past incitements, these sort of comments against people like Beyonce, Oprah, right, Reval, myself, others, they're not harmless. All right. And anybody that thinks that this is just a statement, this really incites people. What point do you think that these false political claims cross the legal line into incitement or targeted harassment?
I mean, it's hard because his megaphone is so
huge,
big, and there's sort of this implicit, I mean, we saw this play out with January 6th, that I think when he names someone, he knows they're going to get death threats. He doesn't have to necessarily say, go after this person. You know what I mean? In other words, he creates the story, or he even just names them and makes them. I mean, I thought the immediate same thing. I'm like, Beyonce's like out there like living her life. You know what I'm saying? Like she's like, like what did she do? And now all of a sudden, I'm sure, I think what you're saying is absolutely true. Like this woman now, I mean, she's a celebrity. She probably deals with her share of threats as it is. But this is a whole other layer of people who are very angry and who've been convinced that, the world, that, the country is being invaded and taken over by migrants and immigrants and DEI and like everything. So anybody who gets called out is a target by definition.
They're also very dangerous. All right. We saw that with the Minnesota lawmaker, when all you need is one. Meanwhile, Trump, and I can tell you that this whole administration, I'll tell you what they're very nervous about: 2026 midterm elections. There's a very thin majority in the House. There's a very thin majority in the Senate too. So what are they doing? They have decided that the way to resolve this, to make sure that they do not lose the majority in either the House or the Senate, they started to redraw the congressional maps, right? Mid-decade, without a new census. Again, and that this is specifically Texas as an example. So I want to ask you, is this even constitutional, or are they just once again testing the limits of what they can actually get away with?
So full disclosure, I have not researched this issue and I am not a scholar on this, but just statistically, I'm going to say probably it's legal.
Right?
I mean, the odds are that it's like, it's not constitutional.
But Asha, the crazy thing that, again, if I was in the inner circle, I would be saying to him, please just don't talk about it. If you're going to do it, don't announce that you're doing it. He not only announced that he's going to do it, but he already knows, as a direct result of AI, because AI is amazing, they could actually draw the map that you can control the greatest number of Republican households in an area, that they will pick up in just the state of Texas alone 5 congressional seats. 5. He came out and he said it.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I've been thinking about that since the start of his term, because it's not just with this. There's a way in which he's done so much damaging stuff, but there's a way in which he could have done a lot of this, whether it's dismantling USAID, sending people to CCOT, this terror, to just, you're not hearing anything on social media. It's happening, and it would be complete chaos, or the withholding funding from, with the universities, for example, where he's making it so obvious, this is because of your free speech that I am withholding the funding. In other words, for a lot of this stuff, he shoots himself in the foot from a legal perspective, because he says it out loud. He says the motivations or the story out loud that then allowed the people that challenge it to make a case against him. Whereas it would be far more effective and harder to even know what was happening if he just never said anything. But he does it because he needs credit for it or something.
I don't understand it, but the way that they've carved up, for example, this Texas map, basically carves up Black and Latino districts for the sole purpose of securing these GOP seats. Don't you think that there would be a very strong legal case for a Voting Rights Act challenge here? And what do you think would be the hurdles that it would face in today's courts, especially as we have now seen? He just doesn't control the White House. He's not just controlling the Senate. He's not just controlling the House. He's controlling the courts too, from the Supreme Court down to the federal courts, down to the appellate courts. He's actually controlling. And I don't care all these folks coming out and saying, we filed 100 lawsuits against Trump and we're winning. Fuck you. You are not. You're not winning.
Well, I think with the Voting Rights Act, especially, right, this is a court that has a lot of antipathy, is that the right word that I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Towards it, and has been weakening it. And it seems like breaking up minority districts to create, to basically dilute the power would, under kind of traditional jurisprudence, be obviously illegal. But it's very clear that this is not a court that is feeling beholden to even its own precedent. So, especially when it comes, like I said, I am not a voting rights scholar. I think there's, so many people you could bring on who could really get in the weeds on this. But I follow it enough, and I know the cases that have come down enough to know that he has a very, he knows that when this gets up there, that he's got people on his side. And I guess the only thing I would push back, Michael, is I do think that the lower courts have been doing a pretty good job of pushing back. And even some of his own appointees, in terms of, for example, the, I call them forced disappearances, but whatever, the deportations of migrants and things like that. I think the problem with this administration is they don't believe that any court, except for the Supreme Court, that is legitimate, especially if it rules against them.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the problem. But I feel like it's important to give credit. The problem is that courts can only decide cases that are brought in front of them. They can't make sweeping rules and all this stuff. And, really it's the job of Congress to put a stop to this madness. And
you know what makes me laugh the most? My Democratic Party. They make me laugh. It's almost like a stupid laugh. Why? Well, they're like, well, if they keep doing this, or if they claim that they're going to do this, what we're going to do, we're going to threaten procedural walkouts like they did in 2021 to block the vote. It's nothing but a legislative stunt. It's not effective. It doesn't mean anything. But you know what? Finally, there's a couple of Democrats who have some balls. Guys like Governor Newsom, like J.B. Pritzker.
I like Pritzker.
Who have turned around and said, go ahead. You do that in Texas. And we're doing it in California. We're doing it in Illinois and so on. We will do the same thing. We will retaliate with aggressive map changes of their own. And we will pick up, according to our redistricting or gerrymandering, we will pick up something like 14 seats, maybe more, maybe 16. So go ahead. All right. all you're doing is increasing our chances within which to take control of the House and the Senate. That's the way you have to fight fire.
100%.
So why don't they?
I don't know. You're better at the political analysis than me. I mean, I agree with you on these governors, but I have been seeing members of Congress who are like, nobody wants to hear about Epstein. People care about kitchen table issues. It's like, no, actually, everybody just cares about Epstein right now. So you need to just be talking about Epstein as much as you can. It's like they don't get it. I don't think it's just an age thing, because it's not just the geriatric people that are not getting it. There are some. It's very weird. It's very weird. Yeah. It's like they're in their own world.
Well, it sure is. So look, Ash, like I said to you, the hour goes by, unfortunately, way too fast here. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Right? Assuming that you zoom out, all right, doesn't this like go to the 35,000 foot, mark that everybody always uses, right, to just take a look at what's going on below? It almost feels like a political fight, right? It's less like of a political fight and more like some type of a systematic takeover of our country, of our democracy, of our Constitution. Are we actually watching the slow death of our democratic republic? Like one rigged district at a time, one crazy policy, one wackadoodle executive, an order. EO or executive order at a time. Is that what's happening here?
Yes. And I think it's really important. I mean, I think it is what's happening, but it's not. The process has started. We're in the middle of it. We're witnessing it happening. I think it's still reversible, but every day that goes by, basically the time that, we're never going to, even if Democrats were to win the midterms and a Democrat comes into office in 2028, I would say that there's like a decade of rebuilding? At least of everything. However, having said that, we're not yet. I mean, it's happening. The slow demise is happening. We're seeing the capitulation of media, of universities, of like other institutions, in addition to government institutions that are not doing their job. But people need to wake up, right? Because the last institution is the people. And, what I fear about America is that because we're not used to this, we've become so complacent and confident that, no matter what, it can't happen here. I think at some level, people really believe that, even as they're watching all this unfold. And that is a very dangerous mentality to have.
Well, it's actually a stupid mentality to have, because while we might be the longest democracy, right, in history, it's just an experiment. Forever. Nothing lasts forever.
Welcome back. If you like this kind of content and you want this programming to continue, the only way to do it reliably is to vote for it by hitting the subscribe button for Legal AF. And I'll stop asking for you to hit the subscribe button when our audience of over 200 million views matches our subscriber base. We can do it together. Hit the subscribe button. Tell us you want to keep us on the air. As always, put a ring fence around us as we protect democracy, protect the Legal AF YouTube channel. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. And I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popak Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popak Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.